Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here at GeoIgnite 2020. Thanks very much for having Paul and I. Today we're going to be talking about Agriculture Canada's COVID-19 response and how it helped us with our objectives and key results as part of our Enterprise GIS Roadmap. I'm the manager of Agri-Geomatics at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, part of the Science and Technology branch. And Paul, say hello, Paul.
Hey everybody, and thanks for picking our session today. I'm Paul Giroux, I'm founder of Slimgim, which you'll hear about today. It's a Creative Commons maturity model that's available for everyone to use and help guide their strategy.
Great. So let's get started. Bit of a presentation roadmap or overview. So I'll give you a quick overview of Agri-Geomatics and our team and what we do. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we needed a roadmap and a strategy. And also talk about how there are different types of strategies and why we choose to execute the one we did. Paul is going to talk extensively about the Capability Maturity Model Slimgim that we utilized. And then we'll dive into the AAFC's COVID-19 Information Hub and its ability to hit our OKRs, our objectives and key results. If there's any time left, Paul and I will talk a little bit about our geo-angst if there's time. So our Agri-Geomatics operational activities within my team, we have a small group that looks at web mapping application lifecycle. So that's making maps, making web-based visualizations, making static maps and PDFs. We have another group that specializes in data management. So they're every day standardizing AAFC's information, cataloging the information that AAFC has, the geospatial information, as well as making it available on the Open Data Portal and the Federal Geospatial Platform. And a big part of this team is now web enabling all our data sets as well as provisioning them for downloads in multiple formats. We have a self-service mapping platform, which is ArcGIS Online. We've coined our ArcGIS Online subscription as UMAP. And this has been a huge area of growth for us to provision a cloud-based GIS platform for collaboration and mapping. As well, we have a very extensive geoanalytics and user support group that works with people all across the organizations to geo-enable their projects, answer and influence policy and programs questions, and have rapid and timely responses to emerging issues. As well, this group performs the training for our enterprise. So if we need to look at that a different way, we have people, we have technology, processes, and it all sits on top of the data foundation. And we're constantly grooming the people, taking a look at our current workforce needs, our current staff capabilities. We use professional development extensively, and we're always looking to better our current and future workflows. We're working across government on several government-wide initiatives to see government-wide architectures and understand integration points with other departments. As well, we like to think we're a really good example of business-led IT. And within the technology section, we're always trying to improve our current technical footprint and looking at future technology needs and performance. We've got ourselves branded to some degree, and our motto now is the Agri-Geomatics team and AFC is genuinely interested in helping people in the department use data and location intelligence to help solve problems and improve their operations. But it's not always wine and roses. So we, just like every other enterprise GIS, we have technical challenges such as aging infrastructure that is on-premise. We have we don't always have timely software updates, and our partnerships with our IT group and Shared Services Canada in some cases aren't optimal. We are constantly needing new infrastructure, and when we make an infrastructure request, it can be immediately responded to with a 9-month plus wait. And even within our own team, we've got technical challenges where we have portions of the team really pushing towards cloud adoption with machine learning and AI, and thus pushing the enterprise along with technical challenges as well. But the bigger problem or the bigger obstacle is often business challenges. So we're somewhat of a new branch, the Science and Technology branch within Agriculture Canada. At one point a few years ago, we were dealing with new directors and new executives. And in some cases, it was a teaching moment for us to teach some of the executive what it is we actually do in GIS. We were seeing some new geospatial initiatives being launched that weren't connected to the enterprise. And in some cases, some groups were we were seeing some duplicate efforts. As well, in a research-based organization that we are, sometimes service delivery and matrix management are a difficult fit, and we were getting questions about the costs about GIS. We also were getting questions to some degree about our technology selections from executives. As well, as with many enterprises, there's always new players in the geo space, and sometimes they come without geo expertise, which can be good and bad. So it's not that we're not up for disruption, but at the same time, just grabbing any different API off the shelf doesn't leverage investments already made by the government of Canada and several other areas. In some cases, GISs or enterprise GISs and us throughout my career, we've lacked executive champions and executive sponsors. And as well, we sit outside IT, which is not uncommon, but it is something that proves to be an extra challenge. And all of this coupled with unpredictable infrastructure costs with our current service providers were some of the big business challenges. So we needed a strategy, we needed a roadmap. From a model to an organic model. This is a slide from Rebecca Summers, who's an excellent resource in the ERISA world for GIS. And for my particular group, at a particular time, we really needed to focus on an issue-based strategy. We were needing to have more senior management executive engagement, and we wanted to do a large diagnosis of our current operations to see how we could overcome some of our challenges with a lot of our strengths that we knew we had. Paul, in comes Slimgim.
All right, thanks, James. So as James mentioned, my name is Paul. Here's some information how to get a hold of me. And if you want to actually have a look at the maturity model, there's a sign-up form on there because we're just about to release a new version 5.0, or you can download the Highway Administration Slimgim T, which isn't that much different from the base. And we do appreciate tweets today, so if you want to use hashtag Slimgim and GeoIgnite, that'd be awesome. Okay, I'm going to talk briefly about the history, a little bit about the community, because we're more than just a spreadsheet. Talk about some common problems that we had and why it was built, and a unique approach that we're taking to actually use the metrics to drive some strategy for it. So what you see on the right is essentially the cover page for my thesis. So Slimgim was a framework I built to measure across people, process, technology, and ultimately the impact of humans on data quality. And that's morphed and changed and improved. So we'll talk about that. So where it came from, though, was in 2012, I was struggling. I was a GIS administrator. I was responsible for standing up Enterprise. The organization I was with at the time had a huge financial commitment to Enterprise GIS, but I was struggling with workflow, getting people involved, getting people at the top to understand. And so I wrapped that in a thesis as a way to kind of handle the stress of changing an organization with location data. And in 2015, that spreadsheet, the Slimgim framework, was shared, and it started to take seed in mid-America, starting in the state of Iowa. So it's been growing and morphing, and adoption has grown. And we're at a stage now that we're about to release 5, which is just the same basic maturity model, just with some improvements in the spreadsheet. In 2018, an interesting thing happened. So the Highway Administration and the DOTs, so a bunch of them decided that they wanted to have a maturity model there that they wanted to use across the US. And so they've adopted Slimgim and they've fine-tuned it, okay? What's been happening in parallel is we've been trying to figure out how to use this information and do a lot more with it. So how do you use maturity to data drive your strategy, and what does that look like? And so I did one locally where I was, and then a proof of concept, and then working with this City of Brampton and Salt Lake County at the time, we actually came up with a strategic roadmap template, and now we're actually at a stage where there's 7 of us in this community that are trying to build strategy from maturity model data. And so that's what we're talking about today, how that's actually helped. So these are the people in the group, just so you know, at a high level. It's St. Louis County, City of Brampton, Salt Lake Municipal Services District, City of Hamilton Region Appeal, Government of Ireland, and of course, Agriculture Canada. And so we're trying to tackle this common problem is basically geospatial programs aren't really well suited to a traditional strategy. In a lot of organizations, you have to start with a different scope and perspective. And as a driver for transformation, we need strategy that can actually focus yet change. And so a rigid strategy just doesn't cut it in our field. Our methodologies and technologies are changing too fast, right? And so are the use cases. They're coming at us fast and furious. And so what was really required is having a better way to use strategy to basically change organizational mindset and create some cultural changes. So it's not just about tech, it's a lot about the data, but the mindset to actually get good data and get people aligned to it. And so, you know, common in a strategy is a vision, but we actually have a common purpose. So anyone that's, you know, delivering enterprise GIS service at large, medium-sized organizations, we're all have a purpose, and that's to provide a modern, agile, centralized, and shared enterprise GIS service that supports innovation and the efficient management of our organizations, right? So the approach we're taking is essentially, we use the maturity capability model to essentially do a whole health measurement. And so this is like going for a blood test. If you're actually, you know, trying to diagnose your issues, you need to go and measure a bunch of things. What we do with that information is we actually employ good strategy. So there's a book out there we follow, which is Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, but it basically tells you how to focus on what's important. And for the past 20 years, we've kind of gone off on a tangent with strategy. And so this book helps us rein in as a group what we're going to do. And then how do you actually bridge strategy and action? That seems to be a challenge for everyone, is the implementation side of things. So we've harnessed taking, you know, a page from Intel and Google and the big shops is OKRs, right? And so this is becoming quite common, which is objectives and key results. So these are some resources for you if you want to actually dig in. And what we do essentially with the maturity model is we use it to assess the organizational health, right? And so we measure from the top down through from the leadership and how much they understand what enterprise means and what enterprise geospatial means, all the way down into are you set up to actually manage data and integrate data? And so with that information, we do a diagnosis, and then we set direction and we create a roadmap for a year. We don't want to plan out too far ahead because things change so fast. COVID's an example of that. And then we use OKRs to action and track. And what's really neat with that is the ability to adjust and pivot. And so we'll, you know, mention some of those things today. And then we repeat. And so it's one of these things where your strategy is going to be actually changing. You use an assessment model to diagnose your health, and then you adapt and you move forward again, okay? So the common goal is what? We say enterprise, and people sometimes think of a piece of software like ArcGIS Enterprise Server or Enterprise License Level, but essentially what it is it's improvement, it's a target. And so, you know, these levels of maturity, basically we're shooting for a level 4, and the leap from one level to the next, it becomes increasingly more difficult. And so a lot of organizations are like early stage or partially at a level of maturity, but we're all shooting for level 4, and it's a continuous effort.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So after spending many hours with Paul and his assistants and going through several questionnaires with a small team, as I mentioned, we did a really issue-based strategy, trying to constitute better executive engagement and awareness. At the end of our Slimgim diagnosis, after year one, we had 3 key challenges. We came up with 5 initiatives, 8 key objectives, and we had 21 key results. So the initiatives were centered around these 5 different areas: awareness and engagement, collaboration, optimization, workforce, and data management. And this is what it looks like. So we have an explanation in a roadmap of what each of those strategic initiatives looks like. We're able to diagnose each of these questions and understand our strengths, our opportunities, our weaknesses, and our threats. And it was all done and automated in a data-driven data studio format, which was really useful to me as a manager to really understand and quickly visualize my strengths, because that's the goal, of course, as Paul's drilled into my head, to use our strengths to overcome our weaknesses. And it's just a great way to really understand what's going on within the Enterprise GIS. So our challenges in AAFC were, of course, to number 1, foster leadership support through executive engagement and awareness. 2, enhance data and process collaboration across the business units, because we're seeing an increased interest from a number of different business units across the organization. And 3, build and foster a digital transformation culture. As many of us know, data strategies are avant-garde now in the Government of Canada, and Treasury Board has mandated that all governments produce a data strategy, which is now commonplace. So the OKRs, this was a new term for me, I must admit, and moving towards objectives and key results wasn't easy, but we now know that objectives are memorable, qualitative descriptions of what we want to achieve. So objectives should be short, inspirational, engaging. As well, key results are a set of metrics that measure your progress towards an objective. For each objective, you should have at least 2 to 5 key results. So this was, again, something we did with our team and Paul. We sat down and went through each of our objectives and set out key results for those objectives. And now we use a data-driven spreadsheet that produces reports like this. So if we see the red circle there, that was our main objective, was to foster executive and business unit understanding and buy-in. And we have a number of key results under that we're working towards engaging. And as I work with my team to try and achieve some of these specific key results, we get a better score on our overall enterprise roadmap. So this is an AAFC example of an OKR for awareness and engagement. This is our main improvement initiative. So to foster executive and business unit understanding and buy-in. And this is measured by our key results. So our key result was to deliver C-level engagement sessions with at least 80% attendance and present up to 4 updates to our strategic policy and data initiatives in the department. And then COVID came along to help boost this objective, beyond our wildest dreams. This gave us, the GIS group, an amazing opportunity. We were seeking executive sponsors, and we found them right away, quick, and several other champions throughout the department through this extensive 2 to 3 month and ongoing mapping exercise. The deputy minister, so our highest level C-suite executive, came to us through another branch to try and get a better handle on the situation, and he wanted to see maps and analytics. And right away we were grounded with our policy analysts, our program analysts, data scientists, and the Geomatics group, looking at data and maps from day one. So this was an excellent, I think, example of digital transformation where we're using a multidisciplinary team to solve a really big problem. and some technical jargon here. We were able to stand up a whole host of web apps, curate a bunch of web layers, produce web apps, map journals, all kinds of different information products as well. We were standing up license managers to support our desktop products because everybody was working from home through VPN, and we had to enable checkout activities for licenses. We were also at this time building a number of data pipelines to support the analytics and visualizations. And this was really all glued together by one destination. We created an ArcGIS Online Hub site to glue all these information products together, and it was our first real opportunity to showcase that product. So this is what it looked like. It was a little bit different for us. Usually we're sending people to one app or a number of different apps. This time we're sending them to one place, a data-driven web experience where they could learn about the specific situation. They could read about it, and they could immediately see the real-time statistics. We were very fortunate that in the beginning, Esri and then later on PHAC were of course mapping the disease. This was a huge bonus for us because we didn't have to worry then about mapping disease. That was already being done by those official organizations, and we could then focus on our sector specific response. As well too, we provided links to the PHAC dashboard once it came online, and as well the John Hopkins dashboard to get the world view of the situation. We then worked with our policy analysts and program analysts to really define 4 different streams that we were going to tackle to provide executive briefings on: food system assets, agri-food labor, food transportation, and vulnerable populations. In each one of these categories then dove into really immersive data products, map stories that would walk through many different variables and examples and information products related to that particular theme. So in food system assets, we looked at manufacturing, wholesaling, and retail locations. We looked at food security, distribution of food through food banks in both volume and number of food banks per 1,000 people. We looked at and are still looking at the agri-food labor situation with temporary foreign workers in the seasonal agricultural work program to try and understand where these people would go to, which farms they would go to, and combine those with, of course, the COVID outbreaks. We looked extensively at food retail using the business registry from our partners at Statistics Canada to try and understand where supermarkets were, proximity from vulnerable populations to supermarkets, as well as trying to understand the difference of where block stores were versus either small or convenience stores, which would be also sources of food for particular individuals. We're able to use other data sources from Statistics Canada to understand food distribution and where food is coming from and where food is going to. And in some ways, we looked at this as something that was secure, something that Canada produces a lot of. We're able to understand its mode of transportation to other countries and its mode of transportation for an insecure food commodity, something that we don't produce a lot of, where it's coming from, and its primary mode of transportation, air, water, etc. Our analytics group really sat down with our policy analysts to try and define what would make up a vulnerable population, and a lot of different factors went into this. We used a couple of templates online to try and understand this particular problem, but we came up with a normalized algorithm that looked at families with children who had a lone parent, families with children under 19, people that were renting versus owning houses, as well as visible minorities, those that I identified as Aboriginal, and of course medium income and education levels were all factored into that algorithm to identify where there was large concentrations of these populations. We worked with our international affairs branch, who was really interested in understanding the food service recovery. A lot of restaurants being closed, a lot of backlogs with food production. It was very important to understand the specific jurisdictions and the trades with the other countries in terms of dollar values and when potential reopenings were occurring. At this time, we're also able to geo-enable Google's mobility data province-wide to understand the trends in grocery, parks, transit, and residential through time. And this is one of those pipelines that we're able to deliver in terms of this data. Of course, comes from Google, but it's not web-enabled, so we're able to build that pipeline to make it available to the whole organization. To mine for insights and analytics. We did the same with retail sales intelligence. So we had a third-party data set that came in on a weekly basis where we were able to, instead of going to one particular analyst in the organization to come over for a few days to gain insights and make a PowerPoint slide, we developed a data pipeline which made this data available in multiple dashboards for the whole organization, or those with logins to view it, to mine this data for insights within minutes after the data was delivered weekly. And again, just some more dashboards, information products for executives that were concerned with the backlog in manufacturing and livestock slaughter. Again, here thinking about, you know, people not having wing night on Wednesday, or people with an increased demand for meat products with a particular manufacturing and processing sector that was seeing strain on its workforce. Same for poultry. And this is a map here when we started to get into understanding bivariates, so multiple variables where we could see where paid agriculture employees were across the country, and where there were high incidences of COVID cases. So that the dark green areas here where both variables are high, which would pinpoint problem areas. And we continue to work on mapping with different groups throughout the organization to come up with return to work scenarios. All this information was available as a data registry, so all the source products, the maps, the apps, the dashboard were all registered, searchable, and we gave access to all the data scientists and policy folks working with us, downloadable information in both multiple formats, and as well access through direct API should they require that in their own individual work in other platforms. One last thing we've done as part of our strategy was to really understand the different GIS workflows. So everything from across the top, mapping and visualization and data management, field mobility, monitoring, analytics, design, all the way through to information and sharing and collaboration. We took a look at all the different branches within our department to try and see who we were actively working with and who we could reach out to. And through this exercise, we did this before the COVID exercise, and I would say it's almost all green now, except for some areas in perhaps field mobility and data management. This particular exercise gave us an incredible opportunity to present and touch many of the different branches and teach them about what GIS was. So we turned the heads of many new potential executive sponsors and champions for GIS, and turned a lot of them into new GIS users. So Paul, our challenges with the strategic approach.
Yeah, and as you can see, I mean, that everything James has showed us is super impressive, done really quick. And so there's a roadmap or strategy in place, and now COVID, and you know, what's the impact of that on the plan? Luckily, you know, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but luckily it actually, you know, met a lot of the main initiatives and objectives. And so, you know, James can continue doing work with his team, knowing that this stuff is actually going to really help with the roadmap and the maturity overall. And so the adjustment, you know, when the dust settles on COVID, the adjustment after will be really easy to measure. Some of the challenges with this type of approach, though, using maturity and OKRs and stuff, is that it's a practice. You need to actually be doing it on a very regular basis with your team. You need to be reviewing your progress. Another one is socializing it. And so, you know, it's nice to do a big strategy and then handing it out to everyone, and often it ends up on a shelf. But how do you actually get this type of roadmap out there in people's hands, socializing it? And that can be an uphill battle in many organizations. I've had issues myself with that, for instance. And then firefighting. And so COVID's a good example. All of a sudden you become reactive and you start falling off the actual roadmap. So it's easy to do that in our industry because we're always reacting to to do stuff, and we're looking for opportunities. Luckily, it's an improvement strategy based on maturity, and so it's really easy to tell though if those things that you're doing to put out fires is actually helping make a difference on overall maturity, right? Is it getting you closer to an enterprise level? And then the other one's this thing called bike shedding, and everybody deals with that. So the analogy is a nuclear plant had to have some meetings to talk about critical business, and they would end up on these non-essential topics where everybody had an opinion, like what's the color of the bike shed, and they would cannibalize meetings. And so when you get into some of these things where we want to talk about high-level enterprise, that's you know, what do we need to do at a leadership level, for instance. You'll often run into these you know, challenges where people want to start talking about other things, right? Like what color is the widget in the dashboard instead of what does the dashboard represent in terms of creating more awareness with the organization. And so the main challenges in general with driving transformation, and so this is a quick slide where we can talk around some points about what we call geo-angst. So James, you can obviously hop at any time, but the three main things I've seen in a lot of organizations, not necessarily Agriculture Canada, but it's leadership awareness and what I call getting itness. And so that's like, you know, in Agriculture Canada, there's a lot of leaders there, James, so I'm not sure if this is an issue there, but are they aware of what GIS is beyond the map? Are they understanding that it is a commercial off-the-shelf, you know, rapid application development platform, and it's full of analytics and dashboarding, and you can do a bunch of stuff? Or is leadership only thinking about, you know, GIS in that box, which is just maps? So
well,
you find that
I think the COVID situation just you know, brought this to light for us anyways in our organization. We had a new executive business sponsor, and we had several new champions that were bringing us around to several different meetings. And once we got into those meetings, we could sit down and listen to the pain points of all these executives and policy analysts. Then we could, you know, once we were in the room with those leaders and could hear this, we could quickly turn around and curate digital information products and bring them back the next day and say, you know, are we close? We could have those iterative meetings with those subject matter experts, and we were showing them things that helped them in their bottom line. And we're doing all this with low code, no code solutions that were done in some cases in hours or overnight. So that was the game changer for these folks. And once we were delivering, you know, we were invited in again and again.
Yeah, and I think everybody's geospatial roadmap that are in this core group, leadership, awareness, and engagement is a massive piece, because you're saying, here's our current state, and to get to future state, you need to bring change the mindset of leadership and get them there. And that's why, I mean, I'm honored that you invited me to talk on some of these points there, because what you're doing is you've used COVID to really kind of move the needle on that maturity in that area, and that's fantastic. So the next one too is I commonly see is workforce. So, you know, you built all these apps and everything, but how do you actually get everyone in the organizations in there and consuming it, right? And using the data to do more, right? How do you get them to adopt it? And so that seems to be a really big one, including what I've seen in the past is a GIS workforce that isn't capable to work on the web tier and commercial off the shelf, moving things forward rapidly. They're used to basically getting a request, generate a map, right? So I don't know if that's an issue in Agriculture Canada, but just getting workforce adoption, finding your power users and actually getting them to actually move ahead with things it's a challenge in a lot of organizations. So
yeah, we're trying more and more to move these new GIS users to the self-serve model using, you know, a cloud-based platform versus the deep dive analytics that is required by the enterprise group. However, you know, we're always there, and we're finding that you know, it's not always a direct line to the self-serve, and there's still, you know, it's an all-encompassing effort in terms of training, awareness, you know, even just basic data management skills are required to be bestowed or brought along with the whole organization.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that in, you know, in the geospatial world now, especially if you got a big platform like we use every day. Is that, you know, how do you build it for them, and then how do you build it with them, and then how do you support them building it themselves? And so the geospatial group is always like in the center of that and helping everyone grow that. And so I know we're running low on time, so I'm going to hit the last one, but this is what I call a fixed mindset. So I worked in an organization where GIS was baked in one division forever, and they were a mapping division. And the organization's whole mindset was kind of anchored into that division. So moving and transforming the organization away from it without doing a major reset or a major change in the way people were thinking was, it basically, you know, significantly limited the enterprise effort. So the maturity could not move forward until we dealt with some of these mindset issues. And that's where number one, the leadership one, is so critically important, right? You can kind of get them going. Another one that I find with a lot of organizations, I'm not sure if this is the case with Agriculture Canada, but in terms of like things being anchored in IT. So because it's technology, everybody thinks, well, that's an IT thing, or if this is a, you know, web product, well, it should be the web development team. But it's like, if we're, you know, they also have to understand the G in the information system, so the G in GIS. And that's where, you know, we're learning how to move organizations forward fast. And that's why, you know, one challenge is if an organization doesn't understand that your geospatial group is your business transformer and your digital transformer, you're going to run into issues. So, you know, I'm not sure if that's an issue with you either, James.
We've got a lot of data savvy groups across many different branches. So I think just, you know, they're turned on to GIS now. They have greater awareness of what it is and what it can do. And in turn, that's creating lots of interesting partnerships just to see data on maps and help produce, you know, new policies and programs that are really anchored in, you know, geospatial information to drive decision making.
Excellent. Okay. James, you can speak to this one.
Yeah, just you know, a couple of slides here for when they get distributed. Some of our all of our products are available on the Open Canada site. We have a public presence with the agriculture site, and we have an internal platform. And most of our information is also available on the ArcGIS Online platform as registered data sets. So I'd like to thank Paul very much for all of his inspiration and work, and thank him very much for joining me today on this great call. And I will wish everybody a great conference here at GeoIgnite 2020. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I will remind everybody to please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen in order to interact directly with James and ask questions regarding the session. It was very interesting, and I hope that individuals are keen to ask a few questions. And while some individuals are typing, James, would you like to dive a little deeper on some of the aspects of your talk?
Sure. You know, we didn't go through the mechanics of the Slimgim Creative Commons Capability Maturity Model, but you know, as I mentioned in the talk, we did do an issue-based discussion where I sat down with the key members of the team, and we went through a series of 55 questions that we rated ourselves on, and that's what really gave us that initial diagnosis of our enterprise and set the roadmap for us to understand our strengths and weaknesses.
Wonderful. And I know that some of the documents that you had shared with those strengths and weaknesses, there was a lot of information on that sheet. Is it possible to get a copy of that afterwards that I could share on our Slack channel?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be more than happy to share our strategy and roadmap. And Paul has a number of examples too that are all downloadable and available for use to drive one's own strategy.
Wonderful. All right. And I guess I would say, do you have any final remarks or anything that you would like to touch on prior to the end of the session?
No, if there are no questions, I'd just like to really thank GeoIgnite and for the opportunity to present on some work that AAFC has done to really move the digital transformation of GIS and just data in general within the government of Canada.
Wonderful, thank you. And I will invite everybody to please utilize our Slack channel in order to continue conversations directly with James and any of the important topics that he brought forward in regards to Agriculture Canada. So thank you very much. And if you would like to join us, we will be following our break going into Zoom room 1, which is the room with the other session, to discuss an overview of the elevation products available through Earth observation satellites hosted by Maxar. So we hope to see you all there, and friendly reminder that following that session in this room will be our diversity and leadership panel. Thank you very much. Thanks again, John, and we will see you all soon.
Thank you.